Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. Shane and I are back for another Survivor What If, pondering the question in this vast Survivor multiverse. If you changed one thing, how would it change Survivor history? As you can see, we're here with one of the biggest personalities in Survivor history. You know him as the creator of Stealth R Us, from Survivor Redemption Island and Survivor Caramoan, the specialist, Phillip Sheppard. Phillip, how are you? Welcome to the Tribe of Nerds.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to participate, and I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So, as we were talking before we started recording, we got to find out what you've been up to since being on Survivor. So, if you wanted to tell us and tell the audience what you've been up to, Phillip.
Okay,
Yeah,
so as a quick,
impressive.
thank you so much. For the audience who didn't hear that, we obviously, before we started, we just thought we'd chat a little bit about what I've been up to, and I shared some of that, and they thought it would be very good that I share some of that with you. So since leaving, Survivor, the last season was on 2013, Caramoan versus Island. I decided to, one, retire from work, what I call full-time work. I worked as a senior executive in software sales for some 27 years and focus on some of the more creative aspects of my life. And as part of that journey was inspired in part by Survivor, because for most of my life, I had been focusing on being in school, being an Army soldier, as we all know, a former federal agent with 3 different agencies. I don't know if that was ever revealed, but I started with the Department of Defense, then worked for the Naval Investigative Service, and then ultimately for the Department of State, for an agency that no longer exists anymore. As of the last 6 months, the Agency of International Development. I worked there with the Inspector General's office as a special agent, conducting investigations on foreign people who traveled abroad, working for the State Department and came back, and to have what we call a debrief or talk about security clearances, things like that. That's what I spent early part of my career in the 1980s before turning to the business world as a software executive. But after leaving Survivor and playing the game, I learned some creative aspects about myself that I always knew were there in terms of storytelling. Being from a large family of 12, we often told stories around Christmas time. My brother Arthur and I did that, and other siblings as well would talk and tell a story. But on Survivor, because we had so many days down where we're not engaged, I could think of things. And as you know, I thought of Stealth R Us. I thought of the names that people would have, the Specialist, the Mentalist, Divinity, Sunshine, the Conqueror. Both seasons became a known entity with that. And then I talked a little bit about my great-great-grandfather, the full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and some of his experiences that came to me in terms of memories, but also stories that have been handed down through my family, because in the African-American tradition, oftentimes the stories of our ancestors were told orally rather than being written down because of the legacy of people who had been enslaved. So, but after leaving Survivor and thinking about, different things on the show, I wanted to explore that aspect of being creative. And initially did a project with my younger brother. And then subsequently in 2015, I came out with a brand new book called The Legend of Things Past, a futuristic drama about a character named Donovan Knight, who learns that the United States and other nations are being impacted by a virus. This is before 2020, and civilization could be wiped out as we know it. And he had to go back 76 years in time. He gets back there and he learns what they learned, that the very first person to have this virus in the future was himself. And then the premise of the story is about, what do they decide to do? Do they kill him right there on the spot? Or do they go about addressing this in some other way and keep an eye on him? And for you all to find out what happens to that story, you need to get on Amazon and get The Legend of Things Past. Shamelessly talking about my book a little bit there. And then in 2021, I came out with another effort called The Russian Job. And it's about a whodunit, pretty much what we're facing a little bit, in the current administration with Doge, but it wasn't Doge, but it's someone who's out for nefarious reasons, and we don't know if it's the Chinese, the Russians, or whatever, that are trying to break the financial system and steal enormous amounts of data to do that. And Specialist, myself, is playing a character as a former federal agent who's called in to solve a problem because someone has been missing and kidnapped. And he agrees to do it. And in doing so, we hope to get to the bottom of it. And that's also available on Amazon, both in ebook, audio, and Audible, and others. I'm not doing the narration on it. I decided not to do that. I do one with a woman's voice, another one with a man's voice, because I just felt, the woman voice that I heard was so compelling that it'd be interesting to have that, at least with that particular book, The Legend of Things Past, to hear it in a woman's voice. I've also decided after leaving Survivor when I was 63, I'm 67 now, to return to school, go to something called the Presidents and Key Executive MBA program at Pepperdine, very exclusive club, only about 14 people will get into the program. You have to write a letter, you're interviewed by the chair of the department, several different professors, and you have to have something that they think would be interesting and would enhance the class, and that you would in fact be able to understand the material that they're going to present us with, both in business 101, marketing, finance, senior level marketing, dealing with all kinds of complex issues that businesses face, either as entrepreneurs or for people currently still working in these types of fields. So I was in there with the general counsel from Coca-Cola, through one of their entities called Ray's Bottling. I was in there with someone from OPI, a transportation executive, a brilliant guy. I think he's going to run for governor of California. I think he's announced that already. Anyway, it was just a great cohort program to participate in. We ended up studying internationally in Italy. I mean, not Italy, but Athens. Ultimately, I graduated from the program and came up with some very creative ideas about how to approach my books and take them to what we call the Web 3.0 platform for multiverse, as well as for utilizing the capability to take some of the characters and potentially put them out there as working with different subsidies and companies to build their brand and enhance my brand and help that if you will, the character, the entity from the book become something real. The way you see this with Dapper Labs today, if you're familiar with that particular company, they do a lot of that for Disney with their characters, and they marketed them. And I just thought that was so brilliant. But I'd already been through the program before I'd even heard of Dapper Labs, and then found out, wow, this is something I should consider. So I'm doing that. I'm also got engaged in September of last year. We're getting married here October the 4th in Italy. Had a beautiful experience there. Was recognized everywhere we went. I get on a bus, in a boat, no matter where I was, the specialist, oh my God, it's you, that kind of thing. I still get that 12, 13 years later. So, quite remarkable to be recognized still to this day by either my voice. I've been stopped on the street as of yesterday. It was in a grocery store yesterday. It's one of those gifts that keep giving, if you will, in terms of the very positive aspects that I got to enjoy by being on the, as part of participating in Survivor. Saw Jeff Probst earlier this year, took one of my students because I substitute teach in some elite schools in the area, both 9th and 10th grade, as well as some middle school classes for Beverly Hills schools and a school called Campbell Hall, which is a very elite school. Some of the biggest stars, celebrities, basketball players, kids go there. Won't name anyone. I think that's being inappropriate, but suffice it to say, I've been blessed to get an opportunity to do that, and I enjoy it very much. I do it 1 or 2 days a week. I became a grandfather. My son has a beautiful boy, and my fiance has one of her daughters have a beautiful child. So I'm in that role as a grandpa at 67, soon to be 68. Still got the guns, guys. Can play any day. Just kidding. I've been really blessed. I'm living my best life. I really believe in staying focused, giving back. I do a lot of stuff with veterans programs. I was recognized earlier this year by a congressman for my efforts with assisting veterans and all kinds of stuff like that. So just living my best life. And when I got to call and email from you guys to participate, I hadn't done one of these in a while, and I thought, why not?
Yeah, that's amazing, Phillip. Thank you so much for being on here, and congrats on getting engaged. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is. To meet someone that's my age, close to my people, go, well, how old is she? Well, I'm 67, she's 66. We're both as active as we can be. She's an avid swimmer. She's also comes from a very educated background. She has very, very gifted skills herself in that department. She's traveled extensively throughout the world in her life. So it was a very nice matchup. And we're both spiritual people. We're both Christian. And that was a nice connection, that we could connect on that level. And so at this point in our life, living our best lives. Got a new dog named Chester, a Westie. They posted a couple of pictures up on my Instagram of Phillip the Specialist. So you guys can see him there. I just got him like 2 weeks ago. So he's a real joy. Not a puppy. He's like 19 months, but a real joy.
That's amazing, Phillip. That's amazing.
Thank you.
But yeah, let's get into Survivor and What If. So Shane, did you want to kick us off with Redemption Island?
Sure. Yeah. So it's really impressive hearing what you've done. And one thing that I heard you say is you still get recognized as a specialist because you definitely left such a big impact on that season and on Survivor history. But I mean, one of the biggest aspects of that season that a lot of people remember is like your relationship with Boston Rob. But what if instead Rob was on Zapatera and you had Russell on Ometepe? How do you think your game goes? How do you think the whole season goes? Things like that.
Well, it's interesting you should ask me that question. It's a great question, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people assumed that Russell, Hantz, and I, would be a big clasher. But actually, Russell and I, when you think of all the survivors that I could potentially interface with, and I've talked to a lot of different people from a lot of different seasons, particularly the older seasons, what I call the old school seasons. Russell and I've done his talk shows a couple of times. He and I have had some very engaging conversations, both politically. He's completely at the opposite end of the political spectrum than I am. Some people would classify him in what I call, some African Americans would say he's this or he's that. And he very well could be. But the times that I've engaged with him and the types of conversations I've had with him about Survivor, and particularly about the season Redemption Island, and he took the time to call me when it was known that Brandon was going to play with me on the second season, and he and I had a candid conversation about it. And he knows his nephew, and he said, "Could you play with him?" And I said, "I could play with anybody, as long as he understands that I am who I am." And I'd give him a fair shot of it. And so, but to your question, if it had been Russell, I actually think that Russell was smart enough to realize that it would be to his advantage, just the way Rob did. Rob didn't go into that season thinking, I'm going to play with Phillip Sheppard.
Right.
Some people say he dragged me to the end, or he brought me to the end. I think that's an interesting narrative, because he already had everyone else in his bag on Redemption Island, if you recall, and people called it like an occult-like type of thing. So he didn't necessarily need to do anything with me.
Right.
But maybe, just maybe, I gave him an idea where I said to him, and it's in the records. Now you can go back and watch the season, where I said to him, my mother told me that 20% of something is worth a whole, 20% is better than a whole lot of nothing. And when I look at here, a lot of these people, they're going to go home with nothing. And I can help you win. How you going to do that? And I said, watch me. And then I began to became the specialist, the bigger than life character, the gorilla, the feathers, the whole thing. And he was smart enough, Boston Rob, to realize that as long as he's keeping the target or the all eyes on him, and then occasionally I was willing to pull something out of my box and target the person that needed to be ejected out of the game. And then that person, and I would go off to do the individual, what do you call it? The
confessional.
The confessional. When I'd go to the confessional, that person would then start orchestrating to try to get me out of the game and talk about how he hate me. Boston Rock was smart enough to realize, tell that person that SOB's going home. I'm sick of him talking about me. And then the other contestants, he could align them and tell them how to vote based on who I'm going home. Ultimately, he'd already knew that the person who was going to go home was the one that I had targeted to go home. So Boston Rock figured that out. So it's not so much that he dragged me to the end, but I was definitely able to help him do what he needed to do. And I was smart enough to realize with that group of people, they were already in love with him. The guys wanted to be him, and the girls wanted to be with him. I was the oldest guy, grade coming out pretty quickly, seemed a little nerdy and a little bit off, downright crazy to some of them, they said. I never saw myself that way, but nonetheless, that's how they saw me. And I believe it had the what if question in a roundabout way, but we've gotten there. from my conversation with Russell, and given the fact that Russell played multiple times and Russell figured out a way to get to the end of the game, he didn't win, but he got to the end of the game.
Mhm.
I think he'd have been smart enough to figure out a way, and he'd have been trying in every way possible to be able to utilize me and take advantage of me the way that Boston Rob played, and that he could try to emulate and do the same thing. The only difference is I'd have sent his ass home. I got to say that, I don't know. You never know, because it's all about the dynamics of whoever's out there you're playing with, right?
Right.
But he found that out pretty quickly, right? Like, why would you eliminate Russell that early, right? Because he knows how to play. He's gotten there multiple times. Hey, guys, he might get multiple of you guys there, but they eliminate him right away, and they never recover from it.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty clear, like, Zapatero made a huge mistake getting rid of him as early as they did, because it gave you guys momentum to keep winning. So
Exactly. And that's what happened. And so I think he and I could have played together. Some of the people they think that couldn't have played with me, and I'll leave that up to you guys to answer, I think, yes, I could have. I even tried with Francesca the second time, but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Playing with Francesca.
No,
so
Francesca. Okay.
So that was completely playing a character at that tribal council. Like, did you 100% know how to pronounce her name, and you were just doing it for TV purposes, or like, what was the rationale behind that?
Well, here's the thing that you guys don't know at home, is that when we do those tribal councils, they go on a lot longer than what you see. And that particular one was 3 hours.
Oh.
I want to say it again. That particular tribal council started at 7, didn't end until 10:30 at night. And that's why by the time of it, I said, I can't talk, I'm losing my voice. And they say that, but they only show you an edit of me going, I can't talk, I can't talk. You don't realize why. What's wrong with him? Why can't he talk? Everybody else is talking. Okay. Because she and I had been going back and forth. And Boston Rob she gets asked a question by Boston Rob. And the way she answers that question, she sealed her fate. Because going into that tribal council, I was the target. I was the one that he was going to send home. But she answered the question differently. So, as you know, after that happened, I was blamed both times she went home as the person who orchestrated her departure. When in actuality, if you really analyze her own behavior both seasons, and just forget about me, take me out of the equations, and just watch what she's doing early on in the game to go be the first one voted out each time, you realize there is something that she's doing rather than what I'm doing.
Right.
Because she had already had, the second time we played, for example, she already had going into the game, had met with and spoken with, went on a rafting trip with Russell, Brandon, Andrea, Cochran. That's almost half the tribe right there.
Right.
Okay. And so who have I met with? No one.
Right.
I had a couple of other calls from a couple of other people. Andrea called me and said something, but I knew from watching Andrea when I played with her the first time that she's going to do ultimately what's best in her interest. And she went back the first time I played to Boston Rob, and she cried multiple times to get them to vote me out of the game, even until when we were the last 5. She goes to the whole group and tries to get rid of me. But Boston Rob realized that if Phillip goes, he could be next, because it would be all the girls. And so he was, that isn't going to happen. But I'm just saying, it's a very complex game. There are things that go on into it. And a lot of what happens, it's orchestrated by the person doing what they're doing. So in my case, I seem like a bigger than life character the first time. I'm telling it, going to tribal councils and telling people what I really think, because I know he's smart enough to realize that it's better to keep me than to let me go, because they're all coming to him and complaining to him about me. And as long as they're complaining to him about me, they're not focusing on him. And when I wanted to turn the focus on him to remind him how valuable I was, what you don't see is in those 72 hours before we have another tribal competition between the two tribes, is I'd get real quiet. I'd go off and see those pictures of where you see me meditating with the feathers and sitting cross-legged on top of a mountain. That would drive him insane, because he'd be left back at camp with them, and they'd be thinking about Boston Rob. He's in control of this game. And he'd I'd come back into camp, and he'd say to me, go do that thing you do. All right, so that's call me crazy, but I lasted 39 days.
True.
Still have the record to being the oldest African American to get to the game on Survivor.
That's amazing.
Good boy, Chester. It's okay, buddy. Boy, he heard my jewelry on the table. It's all right.
You're totally good.
But yeah, you make a good point, because one thing I always say is, like, if you don't make it to the end, you have 0% chance of winning. You could say you play the best game ever, but if you get fourth place, fifth place, you never got to plead your case. You can get to the end and they could call you a goat or whatever, but you at least got to the end with a shot.
Yes. Yes. Well, the other thing about, you know, when you get to the end of the game, especially the first time I played, people said, Chester, it's okay. People said, you know, when I got to the end of the game, well, why didn't you just tell them that you were just playing? Well, remember, I'd already been there 39 days with those guys, and I already knew from playing with them that they weren't going to buy that.
Yep.
They didn't appreciate some of what I was doing in the game. And for those that had been at Ponderosa, they didn't have an opportunity really to say, hey, you know, Philip's playing a great game, or Philip is doing, you know, all these wonderful things. And we know that I made the right call, because when you look at their confessionals, which they don't show you until later, when, you know, for those what they call the outtakes from Ponderosa, where people are talking, those don't generally air, right? Those are things that you can go back and look at as a fan later, what people said. But by that time, we're already at home and been home for at least 6 months. And I got to see those outtakes. I was like, wow, I made the right call, because they didn't see me as like, hey, he really was a federal agent, and maybe he was just playing a strategy to get to the end of the game. Right. They didn't see it like that. I said to myself, I had enough Survivor knowledge quickly I picked up, because I really wasn't watching a lot of seasons. I had figured out that up until Earl Cole, Vesapia Robinson was the first African-American woman. Earl Cole won a season where there were 5 African-Americans, 5 whites and 5 Asians, and the African-Americans came 1, 2, 3, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen before then, and it didn't happen after then, up until the time I played. So I said, if I can finish second or third, I'm saying something. But maybe I can say something to Boston Rob that says, I can't come in third, I can't come in fourth, I can only lose to you. If you do that, I can help you win. And he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, watch me. And that's what I did. So for me, the only time I thought I had one shot at trying to try to change up the game, and that was when it was just Ashley, Natalie, and Andrea still in the game, and myself. Grant had been, you know, sent on his way. And so I go to them when Boston Rob goes to do a confessional. They're all laying up and sunning up in the little tent-like structure we have. And I say to the girls, because Boston Rob came to me, and find out what the girls are up to. I go, well, I'm not really part of their alliance, but I'll see what I can find out. You know, they don't know. Talk to me. So I go to them, and you can see this, and I say, hey, you know, maybe, hey, girls, you know, if you girls want to do anything, I'm down for it. You know, whatever you girls want to do. And they, well, no, you know, they didn't bite. So Boston Rob comes back. As soon as he comes back in the camp, he walks over to them and starts talking to them. They rat me out. Philip came over and wanted to see if we want to throw you out of the game. Andrea volunteered that, and the other girls backed her up. He came over to me. He confronted me. We sat next to each other. That's the only time he and I cussed each other in the game. They probably bleep it out. I don't remember. But we're sitting there. We're going tooth and nail back. I said, did you not tell me to go find out something from them? I had to give them something to see if they bid for it. They didn't bite for it. And you know that because they come and told you what I said. So no, they did. You told me before you left to go on that thing to find out. He goes, all right, yeah, you're okay. You know, you're right. And so I keep my butt in the game. But had they bitten and said, let's vote him out, and I believed him, I would have gone and we would have voted Boston Rob out. And then I'd have went to tribal council and I'd have made the argument based on that argument that I'd given, and the girls went with it, and that's how he went home. I would have tried that. But because that didn't happen, I didn't have anything to stand on. So I decided to remain true to that persona, that character that I created. And that sometimes whenever I had frustration with Survivor, both with the editing, is I felt like they misportraying me as shrewdly as they could have. Because in my life, at 67, there were many instances where I'd be the only white guy in a corporation with 60, 70 men at the, you know, top performers in the company. But the fact that I was one of those 60 guys, believe me, what it took for me to get to that slot and to maintain that position and sometimes even elevate myself further, it was like playing Survivor. And so that's why, you know, they say they like to have winners on the show. Well, they recruited me and they knew a little bit about me from, you know, seeing me around the neighborhood here. Lynn Spillman lives right down the street from someone I was dating for a long time. So they knew a little bit about me. They seen me at clubs and coffee shops where I frequent. A lot of CBS executives went there. So like, who is that guy? Same personality I'm talking to you guys with on is how I presented myself there. And they knew that I wasn't a Survivor fan, that I didn't know the show. That's the perfect kind of guy to bring in that environment, potentially.
Right.
Because they knew that my ability to talk could potentially save me at tribal council. And baby, that might be wonderful television. Right? So they kind of knew a little bit of something about me, and I knew a little something about them. And so, you know, that's what happened. So to your question, again, I think that if Russell Hantz and I had potentially played together, I think I would have figured out a way to get Russell to feel like he needed me. And then I would have been working double time to get intelligence. Had someone like Cochran again, an intelligence attaché is what I called him in Caramoan Island, getting some G2 and sharing it with me a little bit to get him out of the game. And that's what I would have done had he played in that season longer or in another season.
Right. That all makes sense.
To do. Huh?
That all makes sense.
That's what I would have tried to do.
Yeah. No, and to your point about the edit too, I think a lot of people gloss over it, but if you pay attention, like I noticed this, you clearly had a sense of what was going on based on your confessionals. Like a lot of the others, like Natalie, for instance, was clearly like up with Rob. Like everything Rob, that's all she's doing. But you knew that they were all like that. You knew it was in your best interest to follow him. But you had a sense of like, I'm not just a sheep, like I have self-awareness of what's going on.
Well, I knew something that none of them knew. All of them thought they were super, super close to Boston Rob and that he really liked him and that he was trustworthy and they would go walking down the beach together. And I was excluded from that a lot of times. Occasionally it would just be Boston Rob and Grant walking down the shore together because we needed to use the restroom for a second. You girls, you stay here. The rest of you guys just chill for a minute or whatever. You know, what I knew that they didn't know was, one, I read a book called The Psychology of Survivor. It was written by 13 PhD psychologists before I played. And it wrote about not only the producers, who creates a game where you're going to put people in a jungle and starve them. I'd already read that book. And they written up to a few of the characters that had played up to that time. And one of the people that were in that book, they having not interviewed or met Boston Rob, they do give some insight to what they perceive from watching him play from a psychological point of view, these PhD doctors, what they see in him. And I use that just like I would as a special agent. It wouldn't be something that would make conclusive in my assessment, but it would be something in my back pocket and to be aware of. So when I said the bit about 20% of something is better than a whole lot of nothing, I knew based on what they said that would potentially, because I didn't know it from watching him play, right? But I knew that from that type of comment that if he thought it would be in his best interest, and as long as he could keep an eye on me to the best of his ability, he would see, as long as I adhere to the bargain and I piss people off from time to time in the show, I'm kind of mimicking him a little bit, that he would keep me around. And that's what I did. And I also knew that from watching the others, that they are like the fans of, I don't want to use that, that's not a good one. But let's say Kobe Bryant or a famous person who has groupies that hang out. And the groupies get to come to the party. The last couple of instances, they say, hey, yeah, you were in my last show. And, you know, basically, you know how to behave yourself. Come on over here and get a photo. Yeah, da-da-da. And that groupie begins to think they got something over everybody else. You know, they got a photo with them every time they show up. You know, but they're not really part of the inner circle. They're just a groupie at the party. And if you know how to to utilize that, then that's what, a celebrity will do to keep certain things at bay and to use that same imagery to project themselves any way they want to. Hollywood's known for that. So I think some of them thought because Boston Rob was friendly to them, he had played 4 times, the crew knew him as well. That's something you don't see at home. Hey, Bob, how are you, man? Like, you're not going to see that. But a lot of them thought that they were even frankly better than me because they see that I quite didn't have that. But Boston Rob and I in front of them acted like we didn't like each other.
Yeah.
And then we'd have a meeting, a real 30, less than 5-second meeting, like, so-and-so needs to go home. Okay, so what's the plan? Stop. I'm sorry. When I tap the table, he thinks someone's at the door. So that's what he and I knew that, he knew that. We were both like, I described it at one point in the show, we're like two lions circling each other. One of them's got the pride, but the other one realized his pride days are numbered because he's played, he's an older male. Yeah. And there's a few other younger, Matt, the guy who went on Redemption Island for 29 days. Yeah. He was a real threat physically. He could challenge. That's why Boston Rock kept saying, okay, home again, back to Redemption Island again, because he was a threat to him. Yeah. And his Christian manner made him a little more likable. Right. So he got people who normally would have potentially aligned with him to agree to what? Backstab him and send him back to the island again. So I was having a great time watching all of this. That's why I nicknamed Boston Rob, quote, the mastermind by it was over, because I realized he knew he had what I consider a strategic advantage because he played so many times and everybody in my tribe knew who he was. Still disrespect to him whatsoever, but that's what it was. And he knew because of that, as long as I didn't go too far, too quick, he'd keep me around. But if I did, he had the power to eject me. But he also knew that the moment he did that, the tension again would suddenly turn to him. So he was in a very paradoxical situation about how to keep me around, and and it worked out for him. So hats off to him. So yeah, I think I covered the Russell. I think Russell and I could have done that very similar type of thing for a bit. Yeah. I don't know if Russell could still win though. I think there's a part of his game that at some point when he gets to the end, they might go with somebody else if they could.
Right. Yeah. He's going to have an uphill battle trying to win, just the way he plays.
And if I played with him and we got to the end together, I might as well be that somebody else there you go with.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. So that's Redemption Island. You then get asked back for Caramoan fans versus favorites. You end up on the favorites tribe. And let's skip ahead to the final 10. This is where you get idled out of the game by the three amigos, Malcolm, Reynolds, and Eddie. But in this scenario, what if Malcolm, Reynolds, and Eddie choose to idle out Andrea or Cochran and you're still left in the game? What is your plan moving forward at that point if you're able to survive the round you went out?
My plan would have been always first to get rid of Malcolm. Okay? Because Malcolm came into the game against me without knowing anything about me other than seeing me previously play, and brought that same energy from day one into the game. And he aligned with Corinne. But Corinne had reached out to me before hearing a rumor that I was going to play and saying she really, really wanted to play with me. But then once we got out there, I watched her and she went to him, Malcolm. She went to Andrea, got Andrea's attention, but she got it in a way that Andrea knew I can play with her a little bit, but she's a threat. And I know that Phillip's more aligned with me than she is with me. So Andrea can play. Andrea is a brilliant strategist in her own way. And Cochran, the same thing. So from my point of view, it would have been Malcolm and then Reynolds. And I would let others worry about Eddie.
Yeah.
I would vote with them. I would vote with them. But in fact, I tried to convince them to do something. Because I told them I thought that they had double idols. Before that tribal council, I told them that they had double idols. Yeah. And that we should flip our vote and cast it a different way going into it. And had they done what I originally said, we still could have potentially done what we were trying to do. Because I didn't want them to vote for either one for Reynolds or Malcolm, because I felt like they were acting cocky and that they had idols. And I shared that with both Dawn and I shared it with Brenda. and I had intimated it also to Cochran. But they had their own agendas and they had their own alliances and things. And so they voted the way they wanted to vote. And I was comfortable. They told me how they were going to vote. But I wasn't going to try to save myself at that tribal council because I knew there was no saving. And I also knew that as long as they went along and did what they were planning to do, it would flush out one of the idols, which is what it did. You remember at one point, Malcolm gave his idol. I can't remember, was it Malcolm that gave his idol to Reynolds, or Reynolds gave his
Reynolds gave it to Malcolm because Malcolm did hold up Reynolds.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So I knew it would flush out one of those. And there were two councils. There were two of them where they did something. I think Malcolm gave up his once, and then I think he finds. I call it the proliferation of idols. There were so many idols that season. So I think Malcolm gave it up the first time we went, and then the next time Reynolds gave up his. And I thought they played it right to go ahead and vote me out. I had no regrets about the second time, to be honest. I knew I had a target on my back because I was the only guy in that season who'd gotten 39 days. And if smart people know, if they're the favorites know that if you get to the end of Survivor, no matter how you get there, whatever they may think about and whatever they may say to you in an interview, they know you got some chops to get to the end of the game, and it's a 39 game because you just can't get there by looks and stupid charming. You got to have something going on to be able to play. Like they said, well, Phillip didn't have a social game. Yeah, I had enough to keep myself in the game.
True.
Because the smartest guy supposedly in Survivor history was David Taylor. Was that his name? David. My first time on Redemption Island.
David Murphy.
David Murphy. Yeah, David Murphy. He was a very smart guy. But sometimes smart people will display their smarts so cleverly on the arm in broad daylight that you get ejected, in real life as well as, little anecdote story to digress just for a second. I found out later from someone I had been dating for many years, the first time I played Survivor, that her cousin, I didn't know this when I played the first time, but by the time I played the second time, I found out, because the show had aired, that someone worked in the same, so the woman I've been dating 5 years, her closest cousin worked with Francesca in the same law firm she did.
Wow.
So I knew a lot more about a lot of what I'd been told about, what they shared with me about how she would maneuver in the practice was eerily familiar how certain things could happen in the game. I'll say it like that. That's a nice way of saying it. Okay. And so when we came out to play in Caramoan Island, the opening scene with she and I talking, we're back in the camp together. And she says, fella, I realize you got to the end of the game and, that's saying something. And so I think, this time, let's try really hard to work together. I said, I'd like that very much, Francesca. And I meant that. But what did she do? As soon as I came back and then the tribe mates came back and I went to go look for water, what did she do? She went straight to Andrea and said, we need to get rid of Phillip. And and they all agreed that it was going to be me. And then we went to tribal council and she blamed me for it. But actually, again, she orchestrated. I didn't even have a chance to orchestrate anything. Right. She did it herself. So I'm just saying, Survivor is a very challenging game. And for anyone to get to the end of the game, you can call them a goat, you can call them whatever you want to call them. You're still at the end of the game. And by the way, your check's bigger than the only person. If you're the second person, your check's bigger than everybody else in the game. And it's done sequentially. Right? So if you're the first one to go home, you got a nice check, more than you make in a couple of months on an average job, depending on what type of job you got. But if you're second, it's a pretty big check. It's more than most people will make in a year, right? You can do some things, get some things taken care of. So I say it like that.
Yeah. You also Eric Reichenbach, he had flipped when the two idols were played to get you out. I mean, what was your relationship like with Eric? Because clearly he wanted to get you out of the game too.
If you go back, you guys want to have fun, and I hope your fans go back and do it. Watch my first interaction on Caramoan Islands with Eric. The very first time we talked to each other. What does he say to me? My family told me that I shouldn't trust you. You're the only person this season they told me I shouldn't trust you. Even though you've been a special agent, you shouldn't trust you. And I tried to talk. I made nice talk with him. I talked with him and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I go, well, I hope you don't need my vote. He didn't need my vote. But he was the one who betrayed me. And he felt like because I talked to him and I said that I was, you know, the CEO to Brandon and Brandon was little management, you know, to put Brandon in his place. I was basically doing the thing that if you're really trying to win Survivor, sometimes certain people aren't willing to play that role because they know that if you show that you're a strategic player and you're willing to take the lead, that they view you as a threat and they immediately want to get rid of you, unless your name is Boston Rob. And they don't get rid of you. They just keep voting. Oh, I do that. Can I walk to the beach with you? You know, but for everybody else, they go home if you do that. So I did it up front. Still managed to make it 29 days, right? But I knew there were 2 or 3 people already, 4 people. I knew from day one, Corinne didn't like me. I knew Eric didn't like me. I knew Brandon didn't like me. And I knew Malcolm didn't like me. Yeah. And then there were some other people in the other tribe that Probst and them did that switch, the swap early. And those guys had already done their damage about, you know, saying stuff about me. So the new people that came in really weren't prepared to play with me. So, and then we did the swap, the merge, right? And with the swap, that meant there were more people who weren't going to like me, right? Reynolds and those guys. So it was a very difficult situation for me, and I realized that. And I was just like, well, how can I use this to sell more of my books? Because this is a messed up situation I'm in. I get it. You know, Cochran's got a shot, and it's Stelfa Russ. So I'll root for Stelfa Russ. I'll fall on the sword. I threw one thing. Nobody believes there was one competition where I deliberately didn't win to get someone out. But hey, it's what happened. Yeah.
What competition was that?
It was the one where we were doing something. We were on a platform, I think, and we were. Who was it that I was trying to get out? Let me remember now. I don't remember it right now, but I got a lot of heat because Probst and him said, we don't believe he threw it. We don't believe he did that on purpose. And so they put that out in the press and all that. I'm like, well, okay. You know, there was all we had to go back and look at the Redemption Island. There was a thing where I had to I was supposed to hang from my feet over a bar. I didn't do it.
Oh yeah, the one where
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take my 200 plus pounds and hang on a bar next to a girl who's a wafer and think I'm going to win that. I think I'm going to eat the burger.
Yep.
I've already proven my might and strength by winning things for my tribe already by, you know, doing different things, pushing things in that tribe. So for me, it was calculated. Survivor doesn't set any rules. I mean, there people lie in Survivor. People tell the truth in Survivor. There's all kinds of things that go on in Survivor that that people just get to do what they want to do in the game, and that implies to me too. Yeah. So I could have a strategy that said, you know, excuse me, that I was going to what do you call it? I was going to be a bigger than life character and play with Boston Rob. And I could potentially finish second and I'd be saying something. That first time I played, I sometimes get a little heat because I tell people, I also tried the first time to play without telling a lie. And the way to play that way was to find someone that you could align yourself with who could do all the lying. Right. And that was Boston Rob.
Yeah.
I was at some sort of conference not too long ago or something where someone said, you know, well, people make it like lying's, you know, like there's a problem with lying. There's nothing wrong with lying. But each person who goes into Survivor has their own unique story and their own unique thing about themselves that's true to them. And they don't have to apologize for it. They don't have to explain it to anybody. And it could just be their thing. For me, it was about being a former federal agent, having a son at home and watching. I didn't want to go in and just be lying all the way through the game.
Right.
You know, And so that's the way I play. It doesn't mean I'm a better player, I'm a better person. It doesn't mean that. It's just my personal journey. And that's something that producers can't give you, and nor can they take it away.
Right.
So.
For sure. Sure. Shane, you have anything else for Phillip?
No, I think we've heard so much. It's been great getting to talk to you.
Yeah. I did have one more question, Phillip. If you'd be willing, would you give Shane and I Stealth Russ nicknames?
Well, typically when I do that, right, I have to ask a couple of questions. So let me start with you first. Tell me, what was your favorite subject at school?
I'd probably say English. I was pretty good at. I always liked science as well, so it was probably English or science. Math, I was terrible at. So.
Okay. And what sport did you play at school?
I ran cross country.
Okay. And do you play any instruments?
I was in band for a bit in middle school, but I gave it up. I was in percussion.
Okay. All right. So then I would consider you to be you know, a lot of times I would explain to people that when I give a name, if I deem the person worthy, and if I think they have a unique set of skills that are superior than anyone else, then I give them the moniker with the word "the." So like I often refer to myself, I'll say, there are lots of different types of specialists in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about playing Survivor, there's only one, the specialist.
Right.
And that is I, right? In your case, from this conversation and then thinking a little bit about what you told me about what you've done in life, I think about a cross-country runner, because I ran cross-country in school. It's one of the pictures that I still post every now and then. It's me running, you know, on track and field. The thing about a cross-country runner is it's not so much they have great speed, but they have to be very tactical and strategic throughout the race. They have to know enough about the school that they're about to go against to know who the players that are on that other school, if it's an invitational, you need to know enough about the other schools that are going to show up and who their best runners are and where do they typically make their move. So, as you know, there's the guy who's the hill guy. I was the hill guy. My dad owned 22 acres. Most of it was all uphill, and I ran hills. So if I was going to sprint in the race, I sprint the hill. I'd get such a big distance on somebody, and then I let my body weight fly me down the hill. And then if you were going to catch me, you had to be really good to catch up with me. And I knew I either had first or second in that situation. And I'd beat even the fastest guys at my school if it was a big hill. If it was just a regular piece of lowland, then I'd probably get my second or third with the guys that were in my school. So in your case, though, the fact that you enjoy English tells me that in some regards you are a wordsmith. You appreciate, you know, the way words are put together, and that you have the ability to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it. So I would give you the name, and your responsibility within Stealth RS is when I would be absent and something needed to be communicated succinctly and to the point, they would call on you. The persistent speaker. And you push that to the persistent speaker. So you push that together as one word with the hashtag. So
I like that.
The first letter of each word is capitalized when you see it as a hashtag. So
That's amazing.
The in all caps, and then persistent is small, capital P, the rest is lower, and then thinker, capital T. Because you are now the only person capable in that scenario speaking in my behalf. And Stealth are us.
Awesome.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself, sir. First, tell me, what was your favorite sport in school?
Sport, I didn't really play in school, but later on I played tennis. So tennis.
You play tennis?
Yeah.
Okay. So what were your when you were when you were in school, what did you do that you particularly enjoyed that wasn't in the classroom environment per se?
So I did a lot of volunteering with kids, like tutoring, things like that.
Okay. And what was your favorite subject at school?
Definitely science. I did a PhD in chemical biology. I'm a scientist now, so I have to do science.
Okay. You said you did a what in science again?
PhD in chemical biology.
In chemical biology?
Yeah.
You must read my book, The Legend of Things Past. I'm not going to tell you why.
Okay.
But you must read it. You can download it for $2.99, and you can read the first 4 chapters for free before you even pay for it. So, I'm going to give you the name, The Gifted Intellect. Okay?
I'll take it.
And I give you the name, The Gifted Intellect, because because I work with kids, and what I didn't say on the front part is I also do what they call special ed. And when you work with special ed kids, and when the first time I did it at a very prominent school, I hadn't done it before, and I was surprised they picked me. But I have a very high rating in the schools. They rate you, and the particular service I go through, and I'm rated 100 plus.
Oh wow!
But I hadn't done special ed, so they bring me to the school, and I get there, and at the time I didn't know this person that was wandering around and looking over at us quite frequently, but it was the principal of the school. It's a very prestigious school. And so the day is done, and just before I'm about ready to be dismissed to go home, I get notified that the principal would like to see me in the office. And I'm thinking, oh God, what have I done wrong? And I get there, and I realize it's the woman that I've been seeing, looking at us at different times, just thinking it was a teacher or someone walking through on campus. And she introduced herself as the principal, and she says, we'd like to have you come, long-term with the school. And I said, really? This is my first day as a special ed. Why would you, want me? She goes, well, we don't choose. I said, why did you choose me? She goes, we don't choose you. The kids do.
Oh.
So if you think about everything that you think about what you know about in person, Survivor, and you have to understand in those programs, when I go work with those kids, it's true. I realized as soon as she said that, she was absolutely accurate, because the kids automatically gravitate to me. They don't know I've been on Survivor. They don't know anything about me. But all they know is the way I talk to them, the way I interface, the way I listen to them, my energy. They know. And it's a gift. So when I give you the name, The Gifted Intellect, it's to inspire you to understand that I believe, as part of Stealth RS, you have the capability that whether there be a child or an adult, you have what I tell probes, he was the piercing eagle. Stealth RS. You have the ability to pierce through and understand where people are trying to come from and say what they need to hear to get them where they need to be. And with that, gentlemen, thank you for having me on the program and talking with me. And if there's an additional question or something you forgot to ask, feel free to email and they'll try to get back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Phil.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.
All right. Thanks, fans. See you later.